Hello YouTube, welcome back to L-Space Books, or welcome to L-Space Books if you're new. My name is Tristan, and today I am just participating in the Framed in September read-a-thon. Now, obviously this is the end of September, so the read-a-thon is almost over, but the whole point of this read-a-thon is to highlight books that talk about art and sort of highlight art in their writing and in their stories and everything. But then also in Framed in September, not only are we reading books about art, but we are also consuming art, so going to a gallery, going to a play, maybe a poetry reading, and then of course we are making art. Now, I will put the hosts of the readathon down below. You can definitely check their channels out to see what they're doing for Framed in September. But I thought that I would just give the books that I have been thinking about this month. So all of these books are ones that I have read and ones that I would recommend to people who want to read books on the theme of art. And of course you can carry this readathon into other months. It's definitely I definitely picked out a couple of them based on their fall theme, so I think you can definitely enjoy them throughout the fall, regardless of whether or not you are reading them in September. So the first one that I wanted to talk about and recommend to you is one of the books that I am reading in September, and rather one that I just finished, and that is L'arrière-saison de Philippe Besson, or translates basically to Off-Season by Philippe Besson. It can also be kind of like late summer, fall, all of that, but basically off-season. And it does take place primarily in the fall as things are, kind of declining. Things are beginning to shift, and it's a time of change, it's a time of decline, as I said. This book is, the reason why I'm bringing this up right now is that it is based off of the painting Nighthawk, and I will put the artist's name right here because I realized that I'm starting filming this video without looking up who the artist was. But the painting is called Nighthawk, and it's a very recognizable painting. It's super famous. But anyway, what Besson did was he took each of the people in that painting and he gave them a character, and he turned them into characters and wrote a story about them. So not only is this based off of a painting, it also features a character named Louise, who is a playwright, and she produces and writes theater productions, and so that's pretty cool. It's very on theme for this particular season because it has really rich imagery of fall. It takes place on Cape Cod, which I think is a pretty iconic fall location. Massachusetts in general, Massachusetts, like 90% of the culture of Massachusetts is the fall, which is like 2 weeks total. It only lasts about 2 weeks until it's winter and darkness. But anyway, this is a really great book. It takes place, I think it takes place primarily in the town of Chatham, but it also like flits around to like Hyannis and other places like that. I just got back from a trip to Provincetown, and I actually drove through all of these places that this is talking about, and so that was pretty fun. And it is interesting, a book set on Cape Cod but written in French. So that was pretty interesting for me. I can definitely recommend this one. It's a really beautiful character study, and it's kind of, more or less like second chance at life, at love, etc. So yeah, that is L'arrière-saison by Philippe Besson, or The Off-Season by Philippe Besson. Next is another one that is sort of on theme for theater stuff, and that is, of course, Enter Ghost by Isabella Hammad. Love this book. It's like in top 10 of my all-time favorite books ever. This is about a woman named Sonia who goes back to visit her sister Hanin in Haifa, which is in Israel or occupied Palestine, however you want to call it. She goes to visit her sister. They are both British Palestinian, and so they are, of Palestinian descent. Their parents are from Palestine. They were both born elsewhere. Hanin lives in Haifa. Sonia is going back to visit her and gets kind of wrapped up in a production of Hamlet that is going to be staged and put on in the West Bank. So this is all about art as resistance, art as connecting to your ancestry, and the just overall power that is performing in theater and consuming theater as a medium of art. And so this is definitely a fantastic book for, highlighting art and the experience of art. And I really, really love this book. And I say it every single time that I've mentioned this book. It has the best dialogue I have ever read in any book ever. I guess it's most authentic, most believable dialogue. But yeah, it is a fantastic story and very, very well done. Like it represents so many facets of life in that region, and I just think Hammad is a fantastic author. So Enter Ghost is a good one for getting onto that theater theme, and especially if you want to see a little bit more about Hamlet, because the version of Hamlet that they use is translated into classical Arabic, but then Hammad translates the classical Arabic back into English, and obviously it's that thing where you plug in the same sentence through through Google Translate through several different languages and then translate it back to English, and it has completely changed. Obviously the general vibe is still there, but the translations back into English are very interesting, and I definitely enjoy that part. And the form of this is very notable, the way that this is rendered artistically as well as a novel. So definitely check that one out if you haven't already. Next is a book about a painter. It is the biography of Camille Pissarro, and the sort of the subtitle of this one is The Audacity of Impressionism, and this is by Anka Muhlstein and translated from the French by Adriana Hunter. And this is what it says on the tin. This is the biography of Camille Pissarro, who was one of the big Impressionist painters. There's quite a few of his works being featured and on display at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, as well as at the Harvard Art Museums. So if you live in this area, I definitely recommend checking out his stuff. Some of the paintings that this book mentions are on display, so you can go see them, which is pretty cool. So he grew up in the Caribbean. That's where he was born, interestingly enough. His father lived and worked there, I think in the financial side of things, maybe as a merchant. I don't actually remember what his father did, but that's where Pissarro started his painting career, was in the Caribbean. So when you see his early work there, you see a lot of palm trees, a lot of tropical environments and scenery and all of that. And then the slow progression into Impressionism once he moves to Europe and, of course, lives in France. It's very interesting because he was the only Jew out of the sort of core group, being Degas, Monet, Cézanne, Renoir, and Morisot. And so you get that side of things. Of course, Degas became a massive, raging anti-Semite, super venomous anti-Semite during the whole Dreyfus affair in France in the second half of the 19th century. But Degas always had an affection for Pissarro and kind of didn't let that color his opinion of the man. Pissarro was also a really big family man. He never really let his career get in the way of his family and being a father and being a husband, even though they were pretty much dirt poor their entire lives. So he's just a very interesting guy, and the way that his particular style manifested as he was working with these other painters and working on his own craft was very interesting to follow. So this, if you want to learn more about Impressionism, which of course I love, I am a huge fan of Impressionism, this was definitely a great read, and he's kind of one of the more understated or maybe underrated Impressionist painters, and so I was really happy to learn more about him. And if I remember right, there are some of his paintings in here. Yeah, So like there he is, and then I think they have some more examples of his work as well as like actual photos from his life. So yeah, super interesting guy. Definitely would recommend that book. It's not like the most engagingly written. It is a little dry, I will say, but it was very interesting for the content itself. So can still recommend it. I have another nonfiction book for you, and that is Your Brain on Art by Susan Magsamen and Ivy Ross. Now, this is pop psychology, pop neuroscience. This is just a distillation of a bunch of different studies that is on the theme of what your brain does when it consumes and also produces art. And I thought this book was really interesting. I read this in preparation for a class I was going to teach, which then got canceled because I didn't get enough students to sign up for it, which is just, so it goes. But I read this because I was teaching a course basically on this subject of just like books that deal with art and like art and life and all of those things. And I wanted to have this one as sort of a foundation to talk about why art is so important and why art matters, especially in the modern day when so much of it is being taken over by AI and all of that. And I pulled just a quote kind of at random. So one of the things that it talks about is healing the body. There's healing the mind, healing the body, how art can expand your wellness, etc. And this is in the section called The Art of Living Well. So it says, physical health isn't merely about an absence of disease. It's about thriving with less emotional pain and suffering over the course of your life, even when conditions compromise your biological state. Physical health is the foundation for everything in our lives, and as such, it has profound effect on our mental and spiritual health. And then it goes on to say, we tend to go to a place of self-reflection and questioning. Oop, this is bad. Consider what runs through your mind when you don't feel well or when you've been injured. It's a full-bodied response that's about more than the acute issue at hand. Will I get better? What will happen tomorrow? Next week? And then it goes on just like talking about how when our physical health is not great, our mind is also kind of anxious, etc. And then it goes on to say, we all tend to go to a place of self-reflection and questioning when our physical health shifts. It is in this place of confusion and fear that the arts lighten and, in some cases, alleviate mental and physical symptoms around illness. And then it does go on to talk about how producing art can actually help people deal with pain, which is super interesting. So definitely recommend this one for just learning a little bit about how art affects the brain and how it is literally something that can transform our experience in life. So very, very interesting book on that one. Again, it's pop neuroscience, so the writing can be a little cringy sometimes, but the overall content and message behind it is still very, very good, very, very interesting. Now it's fall, as we know. It's September past the equinox, and that's a really good time to slip into a good collection of poetry. And what better poet to consume during autumn is there than Mary Oliver? So we gotta do Devotions by Mary Oliver, which is just a collection of kind of what, basically like her best work of her whole career. And Mary Oliver is somebody who writes a lot about the mundane, the beauty of the mundane, the world around us, nature, animals, spirituality. I'm not a spiritual person in the slightest, but I can still enjoy what Mary Oliver has to say about the human condition and everything. And yeah, just like, I think that her work in particular is really great for going out on a cool autumn day and sitting in the park watching the leaves fall and turn and just reading some of the poems that she has. I will read one of them to you that does feel particularly fall, and that is The Poet with His Face in His Hands. For those of you following along, this is on page 155 of this particular edition. You want to cry aloud for your mistakes, but to tell the truth, the world doesn't need any more of that sound. So if you're going to do it and can't stop yourself, if your pretty mouth can't hold it in, at least go by yourself across the 40 fields and the 40 dark inclines of rocks and water to the place where the falls are flinging out their white sheets like crazy, and there is a cave behind all that jubilation and water fun, and you can stand there under it and roar all you want, and nothing will be disturbed. You can drip with despair all afternoon, and still, on a green branch, its wings just lightly touched by the passing foil of the water, the thrush, puffing out its spotted breast, will sing out the perfect, stone-hard beauty of everything. And I feel like that is a perfect fall poem, and just a really beautiful one. So there you go. You also consumed art because you listened to a poem. Congratulations. All right, last, but certainly not least. In fact, this is the grand dam of the overall Framed in September recommendations. It is, of course, my all-time favorite book ever, Still Life by Sarah Winman. This book I've talked about ad nauseum on this channel. This is my favorite book ever. I will hear no criticism of it. I don't need to. I mean, I'll hear it. I just won't pay attention, really, because I'm not interested. But anyway, this book is... one of the main characters in this is an art historian and an art critic, and another character in it is a painter. And through their eyes, we get these really beautiful discussions about art, and specifically the art in the Renaissance and kind of its impact on the world today, and the overall just like beauty and everything about the art. And the way that Evelyn Skinner, the way that she's introduced into this is she's in the process of salvaging paintings after the Second World War, which is when she meets a young English soldier named Ulysses Temper, and they sort of have this... I'm tempted to call it a meet cute, but it is very much not that. It's like a chance encounter that sparks a lifelong relationship, and it's not an obsession, but a lifelong fascination and just sort of like soul connection with each other. It just kind of like sets off this sort of butterfly effect that leads to their lives unfolding in really beautiful ways. This book is probably, I mean, the reason why I think that this book is the best book ever and a really great book for this particular read-a-thon is because art is at the heart of what it is talking about, and the characters and everything. One of the other characters is sort of studying to be an artist and studying art history, etc. That's a character that comes along a little bit later. But this is also a really good fall book because if you're like me and you don't like the fall, sorry everybody to have to come out to you about that. If you don't like the fall, this is an excellent way to escape it. This book got me through, and has gotten me through a couple times, seasonal depression because of how beautiful the characters and the scenes and the dialogue are, and the overall feeling of joy and contentment that you get when you read this book really is able to combat that just blah of being in the season of darkness here in the Northern Hemisphere at the very least. So this book for me is very important for that reason. I will probably give it a reread in like February because I kind of need to read it once a year to feel during that time. And additionally, so like, you know, that's and one of the good reasons for it is that it is good at picking you up out of your seasonal depression, and it is a good autumn book for that reason. But it also does have some really beautiful discussions on grief and decline and death, and for that reason it's another good autumn book because that's kind of on our minds at this time of year quite a lot. And this book takes things seriously but is still capable of handling all of those situations with a great deal of levity and tenderness without being sappy or cheesy. And so I think this is just top notch, a must pick up for if you want to read about art and life and beauty and love and all of those things. So pick up this book. I will never stop talking about it. Again, it's my number 1 favorite book ever. That should be no surprise that this is going to be on this list. The specific art that you can find in this book, I know that I'm a little bit rambling because I have a hard time condensing and like being concise with all of my love and admiration for this book. But one of the specific art pieces that you can see in this are literary still lifes, which there will be points where you will find somebody that says click, caught forever, and it will give you a description of what is effectively a photograph. It's kind of the picture is worth 1,000 words thing. I'm going to go through at one point and see if they are in fact 1,000-word paragraphs or 1,000-word descriptions on some of them. I'm pretty sure one of them is. But I really love that. I think it's a really cool image and really cool artistic flourish in this book to include in this, especially for it being called Still Life. And yeah, this book really definitely changed my life in a lot of ways. And I'm just rambling again. Just read it. You'll understand what I'm talking about. Okay, well, here they are. These are the books that I'm recommending you to read for Framed in September. I hope you carry on reading one of these into October. I know that September is almost over. I am a little late getting this video out, but these are all great books to read really at any time of the year. Cats are playing. So pick one up. And I think I did okay at picking books that were sort of autumn themed. So I think that if you're trying to stay on an autumn kick, these will still scratch that itch, as well as giving you some really fascinating stories and fascinating information when it comes to the nonfiction books that I have here. Maybe good ones for Nonfiction November. You can carry on reading those at that time. Thank you very much for watching. I hope that I can get a museum vlog out at some point within the month. Wish me luck on that. It could be a little bit tight for timing, but I did get to go to the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum last week, but I did not get to film while I was there. I want to go there again and film and actually get some really cool shots and cool footage of walking through that museum, because it is fantastic and absolutely lovely. So I hope to bring you along for that. Keep an eye out for that. I will be back very soon with another video. Got one coming out this weekend that I'm very excited about. But until then, at least take a look at Mary Oliver if you haven't already. All right, I'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.